The hall shimmered with gold and laughter. Chandeliers hung like proud stars, and every table overflowed with food, drinks, and people who spoke too loudly about their success. The air smelled of perfume, roasted meat, and pride. It was one of those high-class events in the city where appearances mattered more than truth. At the center table sat Mr. and Mrs. Adewale, known across the city as respectable and accomplished. A banker and a school principal, the kind of couple whose photos filled church bulletins and society pages. And beside them sat their daughter, Laura, 19, dressed in a plain blue gown that didn't quite fit, her hair tied back simply. She kept her eyes on her plate as the host approached their table. "Ah, Mr. Adewale. You must introduce us to your beautiful family." Her father laughed, standing tall. His voice carried through the microphone like he was giving a speech. "Yes, this is my wife, the strongest woman I know. And this," he said, gesturing toward Laura, "is our broken child." Laughter. Awkward, unsure laughter from the guests. The host blinked, confused, before forcing a smile. Her mother chuckled softly, shaking her head as though it were a harmless joke. But Laura froze. The words sliced through her like a knife. Broken child. Her father went on, laughing too loudly. "She was always too quiet, too emotional, always living in her head. But we love her anyway. Every family has one, don't they?" The crowd laughed again, politely, nervously, like people do when cruelty hides behind charm. Laura felt her throat close. She wanted to disappear into her chair, melt into the floor. Every eye on her burned like a spotlight. Someone at the next table whispered, "She doesn't even look broken." Another replied, "Maybe it's the mental kind." Her mother leaned closer, still smiling, and whispered under her breath, "Don't embarrass us by crying here." Laura nodded silently. The music started again. People turned away. The laughter moved on. But inside her, something cracked. Through the glitter and applause, her gaze drifted toward the large glass doors that opened to the balcony. Outside, the city lights flickered like 1,000 tiny escapes. She took a slow breath. The noise of the room faded. Even her father's booming laugh became distant. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. She stood up quietly, pretending to fix her dress. Nobody noticed. Her parents were already deep in conversation, smiling for another photo. Laura walked toward the balcony doors, her heels tapping softly against the marble floor. The city wind met her face, warm, free, alive. She stared at the skyline, the chaos of lights and noise, the feeling of a world too big for shame. And in that moment she knew. She could not stay here anymore, not in this house, not in this city, not in the shadow of their pride. From inside, her father's voice echoed again, laughing about something else now. She turned once to look at them through the glass, smiling, surrounded, perfect. They looked like a family from a magazine. Laura exhaled. Then she whispered to herself, "If they've already buried me in words, then let them live with my ghost." She stepped back into the darkness, the city swallowing her silhouette. That was the last night anyone saw her. Morning light crept through the half-drawn curtains, soft and golden, spilling across the quiet living room of the Adewale house. It was a comfortable, upper-middle-class home, cream walls, polished floors, framed certificates on every surface. Everything about it screamed success, except for the silence that now filled it. Mrs. Adewale was the first to notice. She knocked on Lara's door, still half-dressed for work. "Lara," she called, her voice brisk. "You'll be late for school again." "I told you." Silence. She frowned, twisting the handle. The door opened easily. Inside, the bed was neatly made, too neatly. The small wardrobe hung open, almost empty. A few hangers swung lazily in the still air. On the desk, a note rested beneath a cracked photo frame, a family picture from years ago when Lara was still smiling without fear. Her mother picked up the note with trembling fingers. Just 2 lines written in Lara's careful handwriting. "I'm not broken. I'm just tired of proving it." Her breath caught. The paper slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the floor. "Tund!" she screamed, calling her husband. Mr. Adewale rushed in, adjusting his tie, irritation already forming on his face. "What is it? Why are you shouting this early?" She pointed to the empty closet, to the note on the ground. "She's gone." "What do you mean gone?" "She's gone, Tund," she snapped. "Her clothes, her bag, everything. She didn't come home last night." For a moment, disbelief hung between them. Then anger took its place. He picked up the note, read it quickly, and laughed, the same hollow laugh from the night before. "Nonsense. She's just being dramatic again. You know how she gets." His wife glared at him. "Dramatic? Tund, it's been hours. She's not answering her phone." He looked at her phone on the nightstand, dead. The charger cord still coiled beside it. He frowned, this time softer, quieter. Maybe she went to a friend's house. Which friend? His wife asked bitterly. You made sure she never kept any. The words hung heavy, sharp as glass. They searched the house. Every door opened to silence. Lara's perfume still lingered faintly in the hallway, a ghostly reminder. Her sketchbook sat under her pillow, pages filled with drawings of faceless girls behind windows. One page showed a girl walking away down a long empty road, her shadow stretching behind her. By afternoon the whispers had begun. Mrs. Adewale called her cousin first, then the pastor, then the police. By evening half the neighborhood knew. They gathered at the gate, murmuring in tones of false concern. She vanished? A girl that quiet? Maybe she ran away. Ah, that's what happens when you have too much pride in this house. Her father stood on the veranda watching them. His usual confidence faltered under their curious eyes. For the first time he felt the sting of being the subject, not the speaker. Inside, her mother sat on Lara's bed, holding the old family photo. She traced her daughter's smile with her thumb, whispering, "You were never broken, my child. We just didn't know how to see you." But Lara wasn't there to hear it. Across the city, a bus hummed along the highway. Inside it sat Lara, a small duffel bag at her feet, her face turned toward the window. She wore a simple hoodie, her hair tied in a scarf, eyes puffy from a sleepless night. The city stretched endlessly ahead, ugly, beautiful, alive. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't go back. As the bus passed the edge of town, she whispered, "Let them find someone else to call broken." The sun rose higher, washing the road in gold. Behind her, home became a memory. Ahead, freedom, or maybe just silence, waited. Lagos, wide, loud, alive. A city that pulsed like a living thing, full of energy and indifference. Cars honked in chaos, traders shouted over each other, and smoke from roasted corn mixed with the scent of exhaust. It was beautiful in its noise, and merciless in its silence. Lara stepped off the bus at Ojuelegba with her small duffel bag and no plan. The driver barely looked at her. The people around her didn't care. To them, she was just another face, a girl among millions trying to disappear into the city's heartbeat. She had only the little money she'd saved from tutoring neighborhood kids. Her phone was still off, she couldn't bring herself to turn it on. Not yet. The city towered above her, wild and endless. She walked for hours that morning, following streets that seemed to twist forever, until she reached a small food stall where the air smelled of fried plantain and stew. The woman there, round, middle-aged with a headscarf and kind eyes, looked at her curiously. "You don't look like you've eaten," the woman said. Lara hesitated, then shook her head. The woman smiled and scooped rice and beans into a small nylon pack. "Eat first, pay later. Lagos will not pity you if you faint." Lara murmured a soft, "Thank you." The food was warm, grounding. She sat on a low stool near the stall, watching people rush by, students, Okada riders, women with babies tied to their backs. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere, to someone. She felt like a leaf in the wind, moving but rootless. The woman at the stall, everyone called her Mama Kemi, soon asked, "You running from something, child?" Lara looked down. "From everyone." Mama Kemi nodded slowly. "Then eat, rest, and learn the city's rhythm. The city doesn't love anyone, but it rewards those who stand tall." That night, as the streets quieted, Lara found a cheap room in a rundown hostel. The air smelled of damp walls and old dreams. She lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the night before, her father's laughter, her mother's tight smile, the words that branded her, "Our broken child." She whispered it out loud once, tasting the bitterness of it. Then she closed her eyes and said softly, "No, I'm not broken. I am rebuilding." Days turned into weeks. Lara began working part-time at Mama Kemi's stall, washing plates, serving food, learning how to handle the rhythm of the market. She smiled more, spoke less. The people around her assumed she was just another student hustling to survive. But inside her, something was still fragile. She carried her silence like a shell, afraid that one wrong word would make her shatter again. Sometimes, late at night, she'd walk to the bridge and watch the city lights reflected on the water. Each reflection seemed to ask her, "Who are you now?" One evening, as she helped Mama Kemi close up, the older woman said, "You have pain in your eyes, child. Lagos cannot fix that. Only you can." Lara sighed. "I don't want to feel anything anymore." Mama Kemi smiled knowingly. "Feeling is what proves you're still alive. Even pain." Those words stayed with her. Weeks later, when a small child at the stall fell and scraped his knee, Lara knelt instinctively, cleaning the wound and comforting him. The boy stopped crying, staring at her as if surprised by her gentleness. His mother thanked her, calling her angel. That night, Lara sat on her bed and wept silently, not from sorrow, but from the sudden realization that her softness wasn't weakness. It was power. The next morning she helped a young street girl named Zuri find food and a place to rest. They became friends, two strangers surviving together, sharing laughter in the middle of chaos. And slowly the city began to change around her. The noise no longer felt like mockery, it sounded like heartbeat. Meanwhile, across town, her parents were unraveling. The story of their missing daughter had spread. Church members whispered during service. The principal's wife, who always looked put together, now avoided eye contact. Mr. Adewale still insisted, "She will come back when she's tired." But even his voice had started to crack when he said it. At night, her mother would sit by the window, clutching Lara's old photo, whispering prayers. In another part of the city, under flickering street lights, Lara walked home from the stall, the smell of smoke and fried food clinging to her clothes. She looked at the same stars she used to watch from her childhood balcony, and for the first time in years she smiled without permission. She was still lost, but she was finally free. 2 months had passed since Lara disappeared, and her name had turned into a shadow in the Adewale household. The once busy home now felt haunted, her room locked, her laughter erased. Even the air seemed heavier. Neighbors still whispered when they passed by. The Adewale's daughter ran away? But they looked so perfect. Appearances deceive. At church, Mrs. Adewale avoided eyes. The pastor would pause whenever the sermon touched on family unity, glancing her way, and she would shift uncomfortably, gripping her Bible tighter. Mr. Adewale's pride had begun to crumble. He hated the pitying looks people gave him. To escape them, he buried himself in work. But some nights, when he came home to silence, he'd pour a drink and stare at the door, half expecting Lara to walk in with her school bag, smiling shyly like she used to. But she never did. One evening, as Mrs. Adewale sat in the living room sorting laundry, she noticed an envelope tucked under the front door. No stamp, no name, just her address written in shaky handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single page. "I'm safe. Don't look for me. I just needed to breathe where no one called me broken. Lara." Her mother's breath caught. Tears blurred the words. She pressed the paper to her chest, whispering, "My baby?" Her husband found her moments later, eyes red. "Is that from her?" She nodded silently and handed him the letter. He read it twice, face unreadable. "So she's alive," he said finally. "Good. At least she's not dead." "That's all you can say?" she snapped, standing abruptly. "Ton, do you hear yourself? Your daughter is out there alone. Because you made her feel unloved." He turned sharply. "Don't start blaming me. You were the one always pushing her to smile, to act normal, to hide her feelings. At least I never called her broken in front of strangers." The words landed like a slap. The silence afterward was thick, painful. He opened his mouth to respond but couldn't. Instead, he sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. "I didn't mean it that way," he said softly. "It was a joke." "She didn't think it was funny," his wife said coldly. "And now we're paying for it." Across the city, Lara sat by the lagoon after work, her knees pulled close to her chest. The water shimmered under the moonlight, and the city skyline glowed behind her. She had mailed the letter through a stranger who was traveling near her old neighborhood. Writing it had made her hands shake, but it felt necessary, not to reconnect, but to free herself from guilt. Zuri sat beside her, eating roasted corn. "You still miss them," she said between bites. Lara smiled faintly. "Missing isn't the same as wanting to go back." Zuri nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the people we run from are the ones we still dream about. But maybe that's just how healing works." The two girls sat quietly, listening to the waves. Weeks passed, and the whispers from home began to fade. Some said the Adewale's daughter had joined bad company. Others said she'd gone abroad. Some claimed she was dead. Her mother never believed the worst. Every night she lit a small candle by the window and whispered prayers into the wind. "Wherever you are, my child, may the world be kind to you." One night, as rain tapped softly against the window, she dreamed of Lara, standing in a white dress, smiling beside a large open gate. When she woke up, she was crying. Her husband stirred beside her, half asleep. "You're still thinking of her?" "She's my daughter," she whispered. "Even if she never comes back, she's still mine." For once he didn't argue. He only nodded, turning away, and for the first time his eyes glistened. Meanwhile, Lara began to build small roots in the chaos of the city. Mama Kemi treated her like family, and Zuri became like a sister. Still, there were nights when she lay awake, haunted by the memory of her parents' laughter, the way it felt like thunder in her chest. She would whisper to herself, "They named me broken, but maybe I was only bending toward something new." And somehow that gave her peace. Back in her old neighborhood, a storm gathered over the city. Thunder rolled across the sky as her parents sat silently in the living room. The rain hit the windows hard, almost like knocking. Her father looked up suddenly. "She'll come back," he said quietly. "Someday." His wife didn't reply. She only whispered to herself, "I hope when she does, we'll be the ones ready to listen." The rain fell harder, and far away in the crowded heart of the city, Lara lifted her face to the same storm, letting it wash over her like a baptism. Morning light spilled through the thin curtains of the small room Lara now called home. The hum of the city outside, honking taxis, street vendors shouting prices, felt strangely comforting. It was chaotic, yes, but it was hers. She got up before sunrise, tying a scarf around her head and stepping outside into the soft, misty dawn. Mama Kemi's shop was already alive with the smell of baking bread. The older woman, thick and warm-hearted, smiled when she saw her. "Ah, my early bird," Mama Kemi said. "You'll make a fine businesswoman one day." Lara laughed quietly, her voice soft but steady. "Let's hope so." She had been helping Mama Kemi at her bakery for 2 months now, kneading dough, arranging loaves, learning the rhythm of the ovens. At first she barely spoke. Her silence felt safer than words that might betray her pain. But slowly, as the days turned into weeks, she found herself humming along with the radio, joining in the gossip, even laughing, truly laughing. It started one afternoon when a rude customer mocked her stammer. "Ah, see this one. Can't even say thank you properly," he sneered. The words stung like before, but something inside her had changed. Lara looked up, met his eyes and said clearly, "Maybe I don't speak fast, but at least I speak truth." The entire shop went quiet. The man blinked, muttered something and left. And just like that, she realized her voice wasn't something to hide. It was a flame, small but fierce. Zuri, who had been watching from the counter, grinned wide. "You finally said it, girl," she cheered. Lara smiled shyly, but deep inside, something heavy had lifted. Days later, a youth program came to their neighborhood, an organization teaching young people how to read, write, and run small businesses. Zuri convinced Lara to join. At first, she hesitated, afraid she'd stumble over her words. But the teacher, a kind woman named Miss Amara, encouraged her gently. "You have a good mind," she said one day. "Don't let silence waste it." Lara began sharing her ideas, how to bake more efficiently, how to decorate the shop to attract customers. Her thoughts were clear, creative. The others started to listen. One evening, Miss Amara asked her to lead a small group presentation. Lara froze. The old fear crawled back, the memory of her father's voice calling her, "our broken child," the laughter of guests at family events. She almost said no. But Zuri squeezed her hand. "Do it," she whispered. For the girl who couldn't speak that night. And so, Lara stood before the group, trembling. She looked at their faces, curious, kind, expectant. The words came slowly, uneven at first, but they came. She spoke about second chances. About how sometimes, we leave home not to escape love but to find it again within ourselves. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Miss Amara wiped a tear from her eye. "That," she said, "is what courage sounds like." That night, under the faint glow of her small lamp, Lara wrote in her journal. "They called me broken. But maybe I was just learning a new way to speak." She closed the book and smiled. Outside, the night was alive. Children laughing, someone playing soft music, the wind carrying the scent of rain. For the first time in years, Lara didn't feel like she was running. She was growing. And somewhere deep inside she made a quiet promise, not to erase her past but to rewrite it in her own words. It had been 6 months since Lara left home. 6 months since that night when she slipped into the darkness with nothing but her mother's old scarf and the few coins she'd hidden in her shoe. 6 months since anyone had called her by the full name her parents gave her, Alyawalera, the one who brings joy. But joy was finding her again, slowly, in unexpected ways. Every morning she would help Mama Kemi bake, and in the afternoons she attended Miss Amara's classes. The bakery had become her safe haven, the classroom her healing ground. Yet even as laughter began to return to her lips, the ghosts of her past followed her, quiet, unseen but ever present. Sometimes she'd hear a father calling his daughter on the street and her chest would tighten. Sometimes when she saw families walking together after Sunday service, she'd feel her throat close. She told herself she was fine, but part of her still longed for something she couldn't name. One evening as she was closing the bakery with Zuri, a customer walked in. A woman in an expensive head tie, her perfume strong, her eyes sharp. "I'm looking for someone," the woman said. "A girl named Lara. She used to live in Gwagata district. Her parents have been looking for her." Lara froze, her hands gripping the tray she was carrying. For a heartbeat, everything around her blurred, the smell of bread, the sound of chatter outside, even the warmth of the lights. Mama Kemi noticed her pale face and quickly stepped forward. "There's no one like that here," she said firmly. "Please leave." The woman studied them both, then sighed. "If you see her, tell her father is sick. Tell her mother cries for her every day." And with that she left. Zuri turned to Lara wide-eyed. "Was that your family?" Lara could barely breathe. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She wanted to say no, to lie, to protect the fragile peace she had built, but tears betrayed her. "Yes," she whispered. "That was my world once." That night Lara couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying her father's voice, proud and stern, calling her broken, calling her disgrace. She remembered her mother's silence, how she would look away whenever Lara struggled to speak, as if shame could erase her. But then she also remembered small things, her mother's hands braiding her hair, the way her father carried her on his shoulders when she was little. Memories layered like dust and gold, pain and love tangled together. She sat up, clutching the scarf she'd taken when she left, the one her mother used to wear to the market. It still smelled faintly of home. Zuri stirred on the mat beside her. "You're thinking of going back, aren't you?" Lara didn't answer right away. "I don't know," she said finally. "They hurt me, Zuri. But they're still my parents." Zuri sat up too, wrapping her arms around her friend. "Maybe sometimes forgiveness isn't for them," she said softly. "It's for you so your heart can stop bleeding." The next day, Lara walked through the busy market alone. Every voice, every laugh reminded her of her old neighborhood. She passed a group of schoolgirls in neat uniforms and wondered if they'd ever know what it meant to be called broken by the people who were supposed to love you most. At the edge of the market, she found an old woman selling clay pots. The woman looked up and smiled knowingly. "You have a heavy heart, child," she said. Lara blinked. "How did you know?" The woman chuckled softly. "When the river carries pain, even the fish can taste it. But don't worry, rivers find their way home." Those words stayed with her long after she left. That evening she returned to the bakery and found Mama Kemi sitting outside, humming softly. "You met your ghosts, didn't you?" the older woman said without looking up. Lara nodded. "They found me." Mama Kemi smiled sadly. "The thing about ghosts, my dear, is they only haunt what still loves them." Lara sat beside her, quiet. "If I go back, I don't know if they'll listen. Or if I'm ready to see them." "Maybe they don't need to listen," Mama Kemi said. "Maybe they just need to see who you've become." That night, Lara opened her journal again. She wrote, "I ran away to escape their words, but I can't run from my own heart. I'm no longer their broken child. I am the girl who learned to live." When she closed the book, she felt lighter, not free but ready. The decision wasn't final yet, but a seed had been planted. She lay down, listening to the distant rumble of thunder, the sound of change approaching. And for the first time since she left, she whispered a prayer not for escape but for courage. The next morning the air felt heavy, a stillness before a storm. Lara woke early, her thoughts circling the same question that had haunted her all night. Was she ready to face them? For months she had avoided even speaking their names. Every time she remembered her father's cold eyes or her mother's nervous laugh at those awful parties, something inside her would close. But now, hearing that her father was ill, something deeper stirred, something that refused to stay silent. She walked to the bakery before sunrise, her heart tight in her chest. The streets were still waking up, vendors setting up stalls, a distant rooster crowing, smoke rising from fires. She liked this hour. It was when the world felt both fragile and full of promise. Inside, Mama Kemi was already kneading dough. "You're early," she said without looking up. "I couldn't sleep," Lara murmured. She hesitated, then added, "I think I need to write to them." Mama Kemi wiped her hands and nodded slowly. "Words are like medicine, my child. Sometimes they heal the one who speaks them more than the one who hears them." After breakfast, Lara sat at the back of the bakery, a blank sheet of paper before her. The sound of kneading and laughter drifted in from the front, but in her little corner, the world was silent. She held the pen for a long time before the first word came. Her hand trembled, but she began. Dear Mama and Papa. Her breath caught. For so long, those words had been locked inside her. I don't know how to start this letter. Maybe by saying I'm alive. Maybe by saying I forgive you, even if I'm still learning what forgiveness means. She paused, her eyes filling. She remembered that night, her father's voice introducing her, his guests' laughter, the way her mother stood there, smiling weakly, saying nothing. I remember everything. I remember when you called me, our broken child. I remember how the room went quiet and how I wished the ground would swallow me. I remember running to my room and crying until morning. But I also remember how once Papa carried me on his shoulders. I remember Mama's hands fixing my hair before school. Her tears fell freely now. Maybe you don't remember those things anymore. Maybe pain made you forget the good in me. But I haven't forgotten you, no matter how much I tried. She stopped and looked out the window. A group of children were playing outside, their laughter echoing in the warm air. She smiled faintly. I left because I had to find myself. Because every time you introduced me, you reminded me of what I wasn't, instead of what I could be. But I've learned something. Broken things can still be beautiful. I work now in a bakery. I have friends. I'm learning, living, breathing, and I've found my voice again. Her words grew steadier, her handwriting bolder. I heard Papa is sick. I'm sorry. Truly. No one deserves to suffer alone. I don't know if I can come home yet, but I want you to know, I pray for you every night. Not out of guilt, but out of love. She hesitated before signing off. Then, with trembling fingers, she wrote, Your daughter. Alyawalera, the one who brings joy. By the time she finished, the afternoon sun had climbed high. Zuri walked in, holding a tray of freshly baked rolls. You've been quiet all day, she said. Lara handed her the folded letter. I wrote it. I don't know if I'll send it. Zuri read the first few lines, her eyes softening. You should. Even if they don't read it, you've already spoken your truth. That night, Lara walked to the post office alone. The city lights flickered like stars as she clutched the envelope. Her hands trembled when she handed it over to the postal clerk. Address? He asked. She recited it. The house she once called home, the street lined with mango trees, the number that still echoed in her memory. The clerk stamped it and dropped it into the bag with the others. Just like that, it was gone, floating toward the past she had fled from. As she walked back, a light rain began to fall. Each drop felt cool against her skin, washing away the fear that had held her for so long. She looked up at the night sky and whispered, Let them understand. Let them heal. Even if I can't go back, let them find peace. Mama Kemi was waiting when she returned, sitting outside under the awning. It's done? She asked. Yes, Lara said softly. It's done. Mama Kemi smiled and handed her a cup of tea. Then sleep easy tonight. The heart that forgives never sleeps hungry. Later, as she lay in bed, Lara listened to the rain tapping against the roof. She imagined the letter making its journey, through city streets, past rivers, toward the home that once rejected her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid of being seen. She had spoken in her own words, her own way. And though silence still filled the room, it was no longer heavy, it was peaceful. Days turned into weeks after Lara sent the letter. At first, she waited anxiously, every morning glancing toward the road, half expecting a messenger to appear with a reply. But none came. Work at the bakery continued as usual. The oven still roared, children still gathered outside to beg for leftover buns, and Zuri still filled the air with her laughter. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Yet inside Lara, something had. She no longer felt trapped between past and present. She had spoken her truth, released her pain into the world, and somehow that alone had loosened the invisible chain around her heart. Still, there were nights when she would wake up suddenly, her heart pounding with questions. Did they read it? Did they tear it apart? Did they cry? Did they care? One particularly hot evening, when thunder rolled far in the distance and the smell of rain clung to the air, Mama Kemi came to her with an envelope. This came for you, child, she said quietly, placing it in Lara's hands. Lara froze. Her breath caught. Her name was written in her mother's familiar handwriting, neat, careful strokes that trembled slightly at the edges. Her fingers shook as she opened it. My dear daughter, Alyawalera, when I saw your letter I fell to my knees. For years I prayed to hear from you, but deep down I feared you would never forgive us. I feared we had destroyed something we could never rebuild. You must know this, your father and I were wrong. Terribly wrong. We thought we were protecting you by making light of your pain. We told ourselves that laughter would make it easier for you, that if we joked, the world's cruelty wouldn't sting as much. But we became the cruelty we feared. Your father, he has been sick for many months now. He sits by the window every evening calling your name, wishing he could take those words back. Sometimes he doesn't speak at all. When I read your letter to him, he wept for the first time in years. He said, if she ever comes home, I will stand before her and call her my strength, not my shame. My daughter, please, if your heart allows, come see us. Not to fix the past, but to let us thank you for surviving it. With love. Mama. Tears blurred Lara's vision. The letter slipped from her fingers onto her lap as her chest heaved with quiet sobs. For so long she had imagined her parents as unfeeling, unreachable, but here in her mother's trembling words was regret. Real human regret. Zuri walked in and froze at the sight of her crying. Lara? What happened? She handed her the letter silently. Zuri read, then smiled through her own tears. So they finally heard you. Lara nodded, unable to speak. 4 hours that night, she sat by the small window, staring into the dark sky. The rain came softly, whispering against the glass. The air smelled like home, not the house she left behind, but the feeling she once lost. For the first time, the thought of returning didn't fill her with fear. It filled her with quiet strength. 2 days later, she packed a small bag, not because she was running but because she was ready. She wrapped her mother's old scarf around her shoulders again, now faded and frayed from time. When she told Mama Kemi, the woman hugged her tightly. Go, my child. Some journeys begin only when the heart forgives. Zuri insisted on accompanying her to the bus station. If they hurt you again, call me, she said fiercely. They won't, Lara replied, her voice steady. This time I know who I am. As the bus rumbled to life, Lara looked out the window, watching the city she had learned to love fade into the distance. The road ahead stretched endlessly, golden under the afternoon sun. Her pulse quickened, not with fear but with something close to peace. Hours later, as the bus neared her old village, she saw familiar sights. The narrow bridge, the dusty road lined with mango trees, the small church at the corner where she once sang quietly in the choir. She pressed her hand to her chest. I'm not the broken child they named me. I'm the woman who found her own name. The bus came to a stop. As she stepped down, a soft breeze carried the scent of rain and ripe fruit, the scent of memory. And though her legs trembled, her spirit stood tall. Because this time she wasn't returning to beg for love, she was returning to show what love had made of her. The road to Lara's childhood home felt both familiar and foreign, like a dream she'd half forgotten. Every step stirred up fragments of memory, the laughter of her younger self playing under the mango tree, the sound of her mother's mortar pounding yam, her father's voice calling her inside before dusk. But those memories carried shadows too, the whispers, the laughter that wasn't kind, the heavy silence that followed her stammer. Now, as the late afternoon sun painted everything gold, she stood at the edge of the old compound gate. The metal was rusted, the paint flaked. She could hear faint voices inside, her mother's soft hum, the wheezing cough that could only belong to her father. Her heart raced. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to run before she could be heard again. But she steadied herself and whispered under her breath. You've come this far. You're not that frightened girl anymore. She pushed the gate open. The creak echoed through the courtyard. Her mother stepped out of the house, a basin balanced on her hip. When her eyes fell on Lara, the basin slipped from her hands, crashing to the ground. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved, just two women staring at each other, one trembling with disbelief, the other with the weight of forgiveness she wasn't sure she could carry. Lara, her mother whispered, her voice cracking. Alyawalera, it's really you? Lara nodded slowly. It's me, Mama. Her mother ran forward and wrapped her arms around her, sobbing into her shoulder. Lara froze at first, the embrace unfamiliar after years of absence. Then slowly she held her back. They stood like that for what felt like forever, the years melting away between them. When her mother finally pulled back, her eyes were wet and swollen. Your father, he's inside. He hasn't stopped praying for this day. The moment Lara stepped into the house, the scent hit her, palm oil, dust, and something faintly medicinal. The living room looked smaller than she remembered. On the couch by the window sat her father, thinner, weaker, his once proud frame now bent with age and illness. He turned at the sound of her footsteps. For a moment, confusion flickered across his face, then recognition, and with it, tears. Lara, he rasped, his voice barely more than a whisper. Lara hesitated, her throat tightening. The man who once stood tall and unbending now looked like a shadow of himself. She knelt beside him, unsure whether to speak or cry. He reached for her hand, trembling, hesitant, and whispered, "Forgive me." That was all. No grand speeches, no explanations. Just two words that broke something open inside her. She swallowed hard, tears spilling freely now. "Papa, I already did." His lips trembled into the faintest smile. "You were never broken, my child. It was I who was blind." Her mother stood behind them, her own sobs quiet but steady. The house that had once echoed with shame now felt full, of love, of regret, of something whole again. That evening they sat together for dinner, the first time in years. The food was simple: yam pottage, a small bowl of stew water. But to Lara, it tasted like memory, like the home she had dreamed of but never thought she'd see again. Her father spoke between slow breaths. "When you left, I thought I had lost everything. But I see now that losing you was the only thing that could make me understand what I had." Lara listened quietly, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "We can't change the past, Papa. But we can choose what we carry from it." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "Then carry my love, not my words." For a long time they ate in silence, not the cold, heavy silence that used to divide them, but the soft, healing kind that says everything words can't. Later, as the sky deepened into twilight, Lara stepped outside to the courtyard. The air was cool, the crickets loud. Her mother joined her, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "I kept your room the same," she said quietly. "I dusted it every week even when I thought you'd never return. It made me feel like you still lived here somewhere." Lara smiled faintly. "I never stopped being here, Mama. Even when I tried to forget." Her mother took her hand. "You're stronger than any of us. I used to call you our broken child, but now I see, you were the one holding us together all along." Lara's eyes filled again. "Then let's not break any more." They sat there until the moon rose, silver light washing over the compound. From inside, her father's faint laughter drifted out, the sound of something long buried finally coming alive again. That night, as Lara lay in her old bed, smaller than she remembered, the walls painted the same pale blue, she felt both a stranger and a daughter once more. The house whispered old memories, but none of them hurt anymore. She closed her eyes and thought of the long road she had walked, from silence to strength, from shame to peace. And as the crickets sang and the night breeze brushed her face, she whispered a quiet prayer. May no child ever have to run away just to be seen. She smiled through her tears, knowing that tomorrow the healing would continue, not as a return to the past, but as the beginning of something new. The morning light spilled gently into the courtyard, golden and soft, the kind of light that made everything look touched by grace. For the first time in years, laughter echoed freely in Lara's family home. Her mother moved about the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred a pot of egusi soup. The aroma drifted through the house, carrying warmth, memories, and something deeper, peace. Lara helped her, her sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, face glowing with quiet joy. Every small act, chopping vegetables, setting the table, sweeping the floor, felt sacred. It was as though she was stitching her life back together, thread by thread. Her father sat in the veranda, watching them with tired but content eyes. A walking stick leaned against his chair, and a blanket rested on his knees. He coughed softly, but the sound no longer carried sorrow. It was the cough of an old man surrounded by love, not loneliness. He called out, his voice rough but warm, "Lara, do you remember the day you made umla for the first time?" Lara laughed, glancing over her shoulder. "How could I forget? You said I turned it into building cement." They both chuckled, and her mother smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with quiet gratitude. "Today," Lara said, "we'll make something better, something that brings everyone together." By noon, the neighbors began to arrive. Old friends, distant relatives, curious villagers who had heard the whispers that Lara, the broken child, had come home. At first they stood at the gate, uncertain. Some remembered the cruel jokes, the pitying glances they had thrown her way years ago. But when Lara stepped out to greet them, smiling, not with pride or bitterness but genuine warmth, their hesitation melted. "You've grown into a fine woman," an old aunt said softly, holding her hands. "We didn't treat you right." Lara simply nodded. "We were all broken in our own ways," she replied. "Maybe today we can start fixing things." Her words spread through the crowd like a soft wind. People began to laugh again, to talk, to share stories of the past, not to reopen wounds but to finally let them heal. As the sun reached its peak, the celebration began in full. Children danced barefoot in the dust, their laughter rising above the drums. The women sang old songs, songs of homecoming and mercy, of spirits that forgive and hearts that mend. Lara's mother brought out bowls of food, insisting everyone eat. Her father sat among the men, telling stories, his voice cracking but strong with joy. When the drummers paused, Lara stood before everyone. The music softened and a hush fell. "I once thought I had to disappear to be seen," she began, her voice steady but full of emotion. "But I learned that vanishing doesn't heal wounds, facing them does. My parents and I, we hurt each other deeply. But today we choose something better. We choose peace." A tear slipped down her mother's cheek. Her father bowed his head, overcome. Lara continued, "So let this day remind us, none of us are truly broken. We just need to remember where to find the pieces." The crowd burst into applause, not loud and wild but sincere, heartfelt. Some wept, some smiled, some simply closed their eyes and let the truth sink in. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, the air glowed amber. The villagers lit lanterns, hanging them on trees, fences, and doorposts. The compound shimmered with warm light, like a constellation fallen to earth. Lara danced among them, her laughter rising like music. For the first time, she didn't feel like the broken child or the runaway daughter. She was just Lara, whole, loved, alive. Her father watched her from his chair, smiling. "She's free now," he whispered to her mother. Her mother nodded. "And so are we." As the drums played again, Lara looked up at the night sky. 1,000 stars winked above, each one a silent witness to her journey, from pain to peace, from shame to strength. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the drums pulse through her body, through the earth beneath her feet. Every beat said the same thing. "You are home. You are whole. You are healed." And for the first time, Lara truly believed it. As the night deepened, the drums softened into the sound of crickets and wind. The lanterns still flickered in the courtyard, glowing like stars fallen to earth. Lara sat quietly beside the fire, her parents dozing nearby, faces peaceful, years of pain slowly dissolving into the warmth of forgiveness. She looked up at the sky, the same sky that once watched her run away in tears, and smiled. The wind carried the faint echo of her mother's voice calling her name, not in shame but in love. A single thought filled her heart: I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to come home. As the flames danced, her face glowed with calm, no longer the girl they once called broken, but a woman reborn through grace. From that day on, her name was no longer whispered in pity, but spoken with pride. And in the village, when mothers told their children stories before sleep, they always ended with her tale. The girl who vanished to heal her heart, and returned to teach the world how to love again.